Hi everyone, welcome to 52 Weeks of Horror, where we are making that scary and the Mummy trailer has dropped. And we are going to discuss that here now, and it's going to be awesome. First, let's discuss the Mummy in general. Let's discuss where it came from, the reboot, and how we got where we are today. Mummies as a monster really didn't start getting popular until late 19th, early 20th century, culminating with the discovery of King Tutankhamun by Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon in 1922. When that happened, the whole idea of pharaohs and Egyptians and mummies and the curse, the pharaoh's curse, that really took off in popular culture, and the serials started talking about mummies and ancient Egypt. And of course, when we got to the end of the 1920s, 1929, we started getting into the Universal monster films. And in 1932, after Carl Laemmle Jr.'s success with his Frankenstein Dracula, he came up with The Mummy. The Mummy originally starred Boris Karloff in the titular role of Imhotep. Now, Imhotep was a very interesting character. He was a real person. He was the vizier, or kind of like architect, magician of King Djoser. He created the step pyramid. He took the idea of mastabas, which are just tombs. And he decided, I'm going to take one mastaba and stick it on top of another mastaba, and we're going to put it on top of another one, and successively getting smaller. So he created the proto-pyramid. Now, of course, when we go to the Universal movie monster, The Mummy, starring Boris Karloff, they took the name of Imhotep and they had him resurrecting his forbidden love of Anaxamun. And he is caught. And because he is caught, he then is cursed by the pharaoh. He is wrapped up and buried alive to die cursed. Now, it was done a little differently in the remake. The mummy had already been excavated at the beginning of the film, and one of the excavators read from a scroll, and the mummy just kind of awoke and walked out the door, and the excavator, he kind of just went crazy.
What's the matter, man? For heaven's sakes, what is it?
He went for a little walk.
And then 10 years later, Imhotep, he is walking around as Ardith Bey. So when Ardith Bey, the mummy, sees Helen, he's like, oh my gosh, that's an oxen on a wound. I can kill her and bring her back as my lost lover. And she is. She actually says, I was her. I remember being an oxen on a moon. And I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I'm actually kind of happy being young and alive and in this time. And, well, Imhotep is not really exactly thrilled by that. And the other guys who are there, they're trying to destroy the scroll because that's the source of his power. Anyway, she prays to Isis, and Isis destroys the scroll, and thus killing Imhotep. So then we come up to the Mummy remake, which was a great movie. It had Rachel Weisz, Brendan Fraser, and it was fun. It was just a fun movie. It had action, comedy, and horror, all wrapped up in the same story structure. Imhotep is in love with Anaxamun, and she is killed, and he tries to bring her back. Because he tries to do that, the pharaoh's like, mm-mm, mm-mm. And so they take him, and they curse him, and they bury him alive, and he is then cursed. They find him, and they read from the scroll, and thus waking up Imhotep to then take his revenge, not only on the world, but then to revive his lost love. Of course, he is then stopped by Brendan Fraser and company, and ultimately they all save the day. So now that we've talked about the original Mummy and the remake, what can we possibly glean from that to make a, prediction about what's coming up in this movie? Nothing. Not a damn thing, because guess what? They're basically just rebooting the entire thing. Those other movies don't count. They don't matter. In fact, the idea that this is going to be a Universal Monster cinematic universe, they are just rebooting all the monsters. So any movie beforehand doesn't even matter. And you have the book Frankenstein, you have the book Dracula, you have the books of all the other ones. Those are not considered canon. Bram Stoker, Dracula, his book, not canon. Mary Shelley, her book, not canon. They're reinventing every single monster. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, part of me is like, oh, maybe this will be cool. And there's another part of me that's like, really? Really? Why? Why would you do that? It's a terrible idea. But I am going to give it a chance. So let's talk about the trailer. First, it opens up. It's a plane flying through clouds. There's soldiers on a plane, and it looks like there's an Egyptologist, and there's Tom Cruise sitting by himself. Why is he there? Don't know. Not really sure who he is in relation to all of this. But it's poor Tom Cruise sitting by himself. It seems like there are flashbacks of them lifting the sarcophagus of Princess Ahmnet out of the ground and into a helicopter. Suddenly, there are thumps. Thumps. Thump, 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 thump. And we are listening to birds hitting the plane. As Tom Cruise's character goes to the front, he sees the swarm of birds. I guess a swarm of birds would not be appropriate, but in this case, it looks like a swarm of birds. So the plane starts crashing, and it crashes for half the trailer. I mean, if you wanted to get anything out of this trailer, you would know that there's a plane going to crash. I know that's going to happen in this trailer. But there's some interesting moments, though. As we see the plane breaking up, we see a green landscape below, so we're definitely not over Egypt. We're most likely over England. These soldiers are going down, and it looks like the plane is going down over England. So Tom Cruise is being all heroic, and he pulls the chute, and then that's something. That's something. Okay. And then Tom Cruise sits up. Now, it was thought that possibly this is part of a, scheme to get back into the government site, but I don't know. He looks actually rather perplexed why he's there. So maybe this is something where he's going to become an undead creature. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Jekyll has something to do with this, because immediately after that, we have Russell Crowe mention the line of "Welcome to a world of gods and monsters" with the image of the sarcophagus. What's interesting about Ahmnet's sarcophagus is that she looks kind of reptilian. The way the patina is on the face, as well as the frill-like extensions going around. She also is being wrapped with snakes, and her mouth is open like she is in agony. And of course, you have the Egyptian hood, which always looks relatively cobra-ish. Is this something to do with the powers she might have? I don't know, but it's something we can possibly look for in future trailers to come. Reptiles generally mean shedding of the skin, rebirth type of thing. So, maybe? Okay, moving on. So now finally we get to the part that everyone seems to like, and that is the eye splitting into 4 irises, pupils, and everyone seems to like that. I honestly don't care about that, but what I do find interesting about that moment is not the eye split, but the writing that's appearing on her face, because if she is Egyptian, you would see hieroglyphs, but on her face is not hieroglyphs. And going through and trying to research ancient types of writings, it looks like a form of Phoenician, possibly a variant of Phoenician, Canaanite, Hebrew type language, but it looks like a Phoenician slash Middle Eastern style of writing. Is this Phoenician? Very possible. Or a style of Phoenician? Very possible. Which means this would put it some point in the 5 to 300 BC area. Maybe she was Egyptian and the Persian army came in, which it did, or she was Persian, and then when the Greeks with Alexander the Great came in 300 ish BC, then that would have been the end of that kingdom. It could go either way. Either way, what is written on her is not hieroglyphs, so therefore, either she was Egyptian and the Phoenicians came in and scarred her and made her a mummy, or she was a Phoenician princess of Egypt who was then overthrown by the Greeks. So now Tom Cruise walks through the woods and he sees Ahmed standing there looking kind of badass in the shadows. And he tells Annabelle Wallis's character, Jenny Housley, that he has seen her and she is real. So next we see Tom Cruise swimming in an underwater tomb. And what's interesting about that is that the tomb definitely have medieval knights on them. They have the swords, they have the chainmail, they have the armor, and they could possibly be crusaders. Now, what's interesting about that is that the Phoenician languages started in what is now modern day Israel. And if the Persian armies then came through, they would have gone through that area and down through Egypt, taking anything that they had. And when the Greeks came down, they took everything over, and possibly the retreating Persian armies could have taken any artifact from Egypt up to Persia and up to Jerusalem, where it then could have been taken by the medieval knight. So possibly Tom Cruise is looking for something within the tomb of a knight that got something from Jerusalem. So now we have fighting. We have helicopters going through the desert. We're back in Egypt. There's definitely fighting. So hard to say. Maybe they're, again, going to look for some kind of artifact or something to stop Amenet from destroying the world. Hard to say. Or it could be this is how they fought to get the sarcophagus out. Again, hard to say where in the movie this particular scene takes place. So now we see Russell Crowe as Dr. Henry Jekyll. Again, this is modern day, so any ideas that Dr. Henry Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are going to be anywhere remotely related to their original source material, just throw that out the window. That's not happening at all. But he seems to at least know something about Princess Amenet, which would be weird because he technically was a chemist, not really an Egyptologist, but hey, again, anything that you thought before, just take that, find the nearest trash can, and dump it, because that's as good as it's going to get. The next thing we see her raising up as she's definitely got some bodies around her. There's some possible mummies going on there, and she is screaming. She's screaming. Finally, we see her walking down the streets of London, just blowing everything up. And then we hear Russell Crowe saying that she is here to claim what she has been denied. She's a princess. Maybe she was going to be queen. Maybe her kingdom was taken over by the Greeks by Alexander the Great. Hard to say. Maybe it's a love interest, but since the whole idea of Imhotep and Anaxamun is thrown out the window, I would probably throw that out the window too, because the only love interest is going to be between Tom Cruise and Jenny Housley. So now we see Tom Cruise and Annabelle Wallis running through a museum as Amenet is using her powers to blow up the area. Again, we're going to go back to the Phoenician style because in Phoenicia they developed the purple pigment, and she's definitely wearing a bluish purple pigment on her fingers and around her face. So again, that's just more evidence to say that she is probably a Persian princess in Egypt. But hey, and she looks angry. So screen goes black and we see the mummy. So looking at this trailer, thoughts are it's okay. Half of it's a plane crash, so that's fun. Haley pointed out, looks like Mission Impossible in the desert with a mummy. So, yeah. My friend Todd on Well That Happened mentioned that he thinks that it's going to be Russell Crowe who's the bad guy, which would be interesting because maybe Russell Crowe's character of Dr. Henry Jekyll may in fact be good, but Mr. Hyde is the one who's ultimately pulling the strings to get her out and using her to control the world. Who knows what's going to happen? Apparently, there's going to be no crossovers, any more monster crossovers. So if you're expecting to see Dracula, Van Helsing, Frankenstein, any of the other ones, just, again, put that out of your mind. That was Alex Kurtzman's quote when he was giving an interview. So, yeah. But anyway, that's The Mummy. So let me know what you think. I'm excited to see it to a certain degree. Again, I'm a little annoyed that they're just basically saying F you to the source material, but we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be great. Maybe it'll be great, and I'll be wrong, and I will be happy to eat my words. But usually when you say that kind of thing, when you do that kind of thing, when you say to the source material, no, we're not using you, it doesn't usually end well. It doesn't usually end well. So we'll see. I'm hoping it'll be good. Hoping. So anyway, let me know what you think. 52 Weeks of Horror. Like, subscribe, and bye.